Peacebuilding and sustaining peace in peace operations. That is a topic for the second dialogue strand of the Virtual Challenges Annual Forum VCAF 20. This dialogue strand is hosted by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Indonesia, and I'm delighted to further elaborate the background paper for this dialogue strand together with Mr. Soemirat, Director for International Security and Disarmament at the Ministry of the Republic of Indonesia, and the author of the background paper, Ms. Sara Abdelgelil, specialized in UN peace operations and women, peace and security at the Expertise Consultancy House. My name is Susanna Ahlfors, and I work at the Challenges Forum International Secretariat. So this background paper suggests that while the UN has come a long way in adapting its peace-building tools to the changing landscape on the ground, much more needs to be done to ensure that the implementation is geared towards making a real impact in the field. So Ms. Sara Abdelgelil, I would ask you if you could please briefly present the key highlights of your background paper and explain the areas that need to be considered to strengthen peace-building impact.
Thank you, Susanna, for the introduction. It's a pleasure to address the audience, distinguished guests. The paper examines how peace operations can more effectively contribute to sustaining peace. And so we present 4 key pillars that may serve as useful entry points for peace operations to achieve better and more sustainable outcomes in the field. So the first is really the need to prioritize people-centered approaches to peace building and the role of peace operations in supporting peace-building processes to develop from the ground up, investing more in national and local capacities, and contributing thereby to more positive state and society relations. That's really the key issue of the people-centered approach. The second pillar is more concerned with the role of women in peace building, and that's a very important topic to try and move the conversation further from the policy level discussions and integrating women's priorities and needs into the operational aspects as well as of peace operations. And so there is really a need for a much more focused and directed effort to empowering women peace builders in the field. And the third pillar is really about youth and their role in making a positive contribution to peace building. Even though the youth peace and security agenda is a highly politicized agenda still, and there's not enough guidance or political support to really drive implementation in the field. But in effect, peace operations working together with UN country teams can do so much more to support youth in peace building effort. Fourth, and a very key and central element to sustaining peace and peace building is the notion of good peace building donorship. And here it's really about trying to open the discussion about financing to not only be limited to the question about more financing, but to address other equally important questions like what type of financing is required and what or how funding can be spent, taking into consideration local perspectives and local priorities. And so these are the 4 main pillars that we thought might be best to drive and strengthen peace building impact in the field. And together, they converge really in their aim to support national ownership. And I think peace operations need to operate more with this sort of mindset to be able to strengthen peace building impact in the field, really.
Thank you, Sara, for that very good clarification. You mentioned women, so I'd like to ask Mr. Soemirat, while women's participation in peacekeeping operations has gained considerable momentum, less attention has been directed to women's actual leadership in peace-building processes. How can we ensure taking in the experiences and the contributions of women peace builders in peace-building efforts?
Yes, thank you very much, Susanna, and thank you, Sarah, for the background. Uh, First, it is going to be a miss for us if we do not frame our discussion with regard to the big milestone with regard to that's 20 years commemorations of adoptions, the UN Security Council Resolution 1325. So it is very timely for us, especially during the discussion later on during the event, to reiterate and also to remember that we have pledged to fulfill to be fulfilled with regard to promoting women full and equal representation and participation in all level of peace processes and security efforts, including in peace building. And of course we learn if it's in so many report that practically the number is still very low if we are talking about women participations, maybe as a negotiator, mediator, or even the signatories of peace process. The numbers were still very low. Even the female peacekeepers number also maybe only consists of 6% of all personnel of the UN peacekeeping or peace operations. So of course there is a need. At least there is a genuine understanding from all stakeholders that there is a need to enhance the participations of the women peacekeepers and peace builder. But of course, the question is how. So this is something that we need to elaborate more during the discussion because we need to explore so many challenges that we need to address, maybe in the long term and also in the short term. I mean, for example, we need to check with regard to the situation that might hinders the what they call it, the participations of women in peacekeeping and peace building issues. For example, I don't know, maybe we need to check whether the predominantly patriarchy social system uh, will shape the nature of peace and security issues in some countries or region, because it might also create a situation that hinders local acceptance to the presence of women, for example, as agent of peace in the field. And also we need to check again to share experience between different stakeholders and countries with regard to the political will, budget constraints, and structural deficiencies. So this is something that we need to elaborate more. And from our part, from Indonesia, we try to bring the issue of the women peacekeeping as one of our highlight during the membership in the UN Security Council for the period of 2019-2020. It was just last August that we managed to adopt Resolution 2538 on women in peacekeeping that is co-sponsored by all UN Security Council members as well as other 97 UN member states. So there is a strong support at least there with regard to what do you call it, to bring further the issue of the women peacekeeping in the UN framework. And of course, later on, we need to shape it in a more comprehensive manner in order to have a parallel, what do you call it, development in the area of peace building also.
Thank you, Mr. Soemirat. Very good. And talking more about coordination, which is something that is brought out in this background paper, how can peace operations better ensure that their activities are synchronized and integrated with the longer-term peace-building activities by development partners and others, so that they can optimize their sustainable impact on the ground?
Yes, I think maybe we also try to, let's say, to speak in the spectrum of peace continuum in general, and also the sustaining peace concept, where practically the issue of peacemaking, peacekeeping, peace building is, and even sustainable development is something that intertwine each other. Uh, for sure, with regard to UN peace operations, if I may start from that particular point, we need to have a similar understanding that the UN peace operations are not to be last forever. It's not going to be there forever. I mean, there should be a clear transition, or at least what you call it, the clear roadmap with regard to the end of the peace operation and transform it into a more long-term peace building activities. So unfortunately, of course, the current situation with the COVID-19 has undoubtedly affected the way of we do business, including peacekeeping and peace building. But this is something that we need to address together. And therefore, the issue of peace building should be an integral dimension of the peace operation mandate from the outset. So this is something that we need to bring together to the surface. And the other issue may be building local institution and national ownership should be considered and understood as a long-term process anyway. So to this end, there is a need to implement peace building process as early as possible. And maybe last one, there is no room for us working in a silo, including for the UN peace operations. So there is a need for the more integrated and joint programming between the UN systems itself, regional organizations, and other relevant actors.
Thank you, Mr. Soemirat. And very briefly, Ms. Sara Abdelgelil, how can we use this background paper in our discussions, and what elements will be discussed further during the dialogue strand 2?
Well, the paper is really meant to be a conversation starter. And so it highlights some of the challenges and opportunities for advancing, sustaining peace in peace operations. And I've put forward some suggestions like the need for more programmatic funding in peace operations, and highlighted some examples for operationalizing sustaining peace, like in the Gambia and Liberia. And these are meant to stimulate further discussions really on how the 4 pillars that are presented in the paper can be integrated and prioritized in the strategic and operational work of peace operations. And so in terms of elements for further discussions, I think issues like addressing immediate concerns while keeping an eye for the long term, achieving policy and operational coherence in the field, promoting field partnerships and coordination between the different actors. I think those are some of the underlying themes in the paper that will necessarily be featured more prominently in discussions in Dialogue Strand 2. And particularly when it comes to sustaining peace efforts, it's important to understand and appreciate the role and limitation of peace operations. And so that's why the discussion about the different actors involved in sustaining peace and where responsibility and accountability reside within those different actors will be particularly important as well in this dialogue strand.
Thank you so much, both of you, for highlighting these very interesting aspects. And we look forward to discussing this topic of peace building and sustaining peace with you at the Virtual Challenges Annual Forum, Wednesday, the 9th of December. Thank you very much for participating.
Yeah. Thank you very much.